Alright guys, my name is Seven. I'm a UI UX designer, so I'm gonna skim over some choice topics on UI UX. Maybe there's one or two things you guys can take away and utilize in your project, that's my hope. Now I run Retrographic LLC. I'm working on a bicycle Craigslist app called Sprocket. So let's get into it. We're gonna cover market research. We're gonna cover stealing like an artist. Consistency in your UI UX designs, and ease of use, and finish up with some user tests. So really, market research. One of the most important things that you should do is if you're in some area, like you're doing a space fighter sim, you're doing a city building game, look at what your competitors are doing. Basically, design is effort of optimizing interfacing systems. And as far as me, because I do UI UX design, I go on the App Store, I go on Google Play, and I look at what my competitors are doing. I look at what the top ranking apps are doing. And I take note of what's working and what's not working. I take a lot of screenshots. This is just a little bit of the screenshots that I take. I organize them in all sorts of folders. I can see how apps are changing over time, why certain design decisions are being made, why certain decisions aren't working. So I encourage you to do the same. Steal like an artist. Okay, so maybe don't like screenshot the exact asset and drop it into your game. But basically, as a designer, there's many ways to design something. But as a UI UX design, there's often one way to make it happen. There's only one efficient way to design something. So when you are designing, there's kind of like this minefield of unknown things that you can stumble across. And you don't really want to reinvent the wheel when you can leverage the time and energy your competitors and other designers have already spent figuring out these things on your particular platform, whether it's the PS3, whether it's an iPhone, whether it's anything else. So in that regard, I look at big apps like YouTube and I copy from them. I look at Instagram, one of my favorite apps that I blog on every day, on Sprocket blog, and I basically take literally as needed. I borrow UI, I borrow UX, I borrow color schemes and other ideas. On consistency. So you're making an RPG game, you're making a sci-fi game, you're making any other kind of game, you want to make sure that whatever style you choose, you stick to it and be boring. Because when you're boring, you give your players a sense of immersion, and when you're looking at monetizing your software, you're giving them kind of a level of trust in your service. So they're more likely to buy from you if your game is consistently styled the same way. Unless there's a reason that it shouldn't be, in which case go ahead and go crazy. So for here, there's a flight interface for iOS 9, there's a skeuomorphic interface for iOS 6. For my app, it all starts with the app icon, so Sprocket has a green and white app icon that translates into a green and white color scheme, some other simple details. And you can see that really goes through the app. And you can feel like you're in the same piece of experience. So this applies across all design, whether it's an app or a video game. Using the same fonts, don't go nuts with fonts, make sure your fonts are legible. And that gets me into optimizing for ease of usability. So you want your games to be learnable. You can see what's wrong with this one, right? You want to make sure to avoid these kind of problems in your project. People really derp, and you're kind of like an anti-derp sensei. So you want to make sure to get them to not make mistakes, so they're not frustrated, so they're having fun, so they're buying from you, right? Users are kind of like lava, they're going through your experience, and it's up to you to kind of steer them where you want them to go. So really think about what are the goals that you're trying to set for yourself in this project, whether it's monetization or something else like selling assets. And think about the core areas of your experience that require more attention, and try to focus more of your energy, money, and contractor's time, or whatever it is, on those areas. Optimize for the key aspects of that experience. And lastly, and most importantly, what I see often not done, especially frustrating in video games, where I go in and I can't figure out what the heck I'm supposed to do, is user test. Like, whenever you build something, it's just a theory that it's going to work and that people are going to enjoy it. Put it in someone's hands, ask them a bunch of questions, have them try it out. Basically, I don't always make assumptions, but when I do, they usually are wrong. Talk to them. You might go get him a coffee. You might find a family member to talk to. When I'm working on my bicycle app, I go on bicycle rides, Sam's Bike Party and other rides, and I'm there with my app and I'm asking riders what they like and what they don't like. And I'm collecting all that feedback. Usually, when you ask just 5 people, it's really apparent when things are broken, and you don't usually need to go farther than that. Bring a prototype. Prototypes are really great. If you can sit down on your laptop and show them your game, that is all the better. And as an example of what can be improved, this is my favorite game, Morrowind. And in Morrowind, the way the weapons worked is there was like a spells category and weapons category, right? And you had 2 additional keys to switch between the weapons category and the spells category, and it was like a really clunky system. And what they realized later is what people wanted a fireball in one hand and a sword in another hand. And it's not like they couldn't do this, but they didn't, get there right away. So this is kind of the difference you get in good user testing. All right. Any design questions I can answer, I'd be happy to.
All right, so I got one. This one's kind of specific. So you said you do a lot of research on apps, I guess popular apps. And I saw a lot of the apps you were showing were really big ones, like YouTube, you said Instagram, that kind of stuff. Do you think in the App Store, trends and like popular kinds of designs, do they come from big apps and then small apps adopt them? Is that like usually the flow of these like trendy designs, or like what is it? What's your opinion on this?
Excellent question. I love answering this one. There's basically, for software applications, specifically 2 different directions that app companies go. If they're a giant company like Facebook or Google and they have a lot of money, that means that they have a big team, that they pay a lot of money, and they can do a lot of customization on their interface, right? If they're a smaller team like my team, where I have very little money and very low margin, I try to use pre-built elements and as much free stuff as I can get away with, right? I still want to look at those apps to see what they're doing, where they're innovating, and what like the top trends are, and kind of try to pull some of that knowledge and look for opportunities to utilize it in my app. But I really want to optimize for cheapness and quick delivery over maybe making the custom viewfinder in YouTube that moves around that would take me like 3 months to implement, where I have like other things I can do. Yeah.
You mentioned user testing. Can you describe that a little bit more? Are you doing like split testing or market research testing or the type?
There's a lot of different testing you can do. I'm glad you asked that question. The most fun I've had testing recently has been in the Google Developer Console, where you can run a lot of experiments. You can run experiments on your icons, on your text description, on the background for the app, on the app video, etc. And then you can see over time which ones are performing better and worse. And sometimes it's really obvious, like one of them will just take off. You don't need to run the experiment any longer. There's A/B testing you can do. So there's a whole bunch of services you can find online where you can subscribe and you can say either have users test my app and show me a video of it, and they can report through the platform like what they're experiencing and why it's good. Or you can just, if you're, for example, running a site, run an A/B test, like fork some of your traffic to one design and some to another design and see what it kind of does in the bottom line. The kind of testing that I like to do really depends on the severity of the problem that I'm identifying. So first, I try to test it on myself and see if I can trip myself up and find some issues with it. Then I will go to my coworkers and test it on them and see if they get tripped up and find something. Then I go, the next step, like I go get people in the public and test with them and bring prototypes and have, a notepad and look over their shoulder and see where they're messing up and why. And I don't like to be judgmental, so you want to be really nice and polite and thank them for their time. But you do learn a lot, because oftentimes there's also a bias from people you know or people you work with that you don't get when you ask people on the street, and they tell it to you straight because if they've never seen it before, they haven't worked with it for years. So there's a lot of different options out there.
Okay. And you mentioned Bike and Craigslist and something. Can you describe a little bit more about that? Just curious.
Oh yeah, sure. Basically, Sprocket is a bicycle marketplace, peer-to-peer bicycle buying and selling that I'm working on. Not entirely done yet, but it's up on Android. It's going to be out on iOS eventually. The other aspect of it is a bicycle database. So we're listing 55,000 bikes on Android, and you can look at them and see the factory specs. So if you're a bike gearhead, you can go find your bike, find what specs it follows, and know like what derailleurs are compatible and not compatible, and what the quality of the frames is. So it's an app that I've wanted. No one's been making it, so I'm making it. Cool. All right. Go ahead.
Yeah, so you mentioned that usually when you give your app to test from other people, then usually you can know whether it's broken or not. So have you noticed, is there any pattern that guarantees some bad design?
A lot of the things I covered, like, you know, having inconsistent experience, having a difficult to learn experience, difficult, you know, legibility, basically bad design. In terms of specific patterns, I think one of the most important lessons I've learned over the years doing UI UX design is that you really have to use the knowledge that your gamers or users have from other experiences previously, right? So not only should you not reinvent the wheel a lot of the time, you shouldn't go out of your way to make a custom user interface that is so out there and so revolutionary that they don't know how to use it. They should come into your app, if they've played an RTS before, being familiar with how your RTS works, right? If they come into an FPS game, they should be familiar with how it works from other FPS games that you played before, right? And you can kind of tease at that, like have different gameplay mechanics or push the boundaries of what makes your interface or your gameplay experience different, but don't push it so far that they get alienated and frustrated, right? Like actually, I worked on a game with Tobiah called Tap Party, and the first version of that game that I made, and I was like a really newbie designer back then, I made this kind of interface where you pulled out the players from the center and customized them, and then hit a button in the middle to start playing. Well, I thought it was revolutionary, but people thought it was already the game. So they thought it was part of the puzzle, and they couldn't figure out how to solve the puzzle, or there wasn't really a puzzle that they needed to solve. So watch out for that. Great. Well, thank you guys. A lot of fun. See you.